Hello everyone, in this video we're going to draw a bobcat. We'll start by drawing a few simple shapes, then add the final drawing on top using easy line work, and then add some shading for the final result. I'll add a link to the materials used in the description below. Let's jump in. Start by drawing a circle as a guide for the head. And an easy way to draw a circle is to first make a couple of small marks to indicate the circle's height, and then on the sides make a couple more small marks to indicate the circle's width. Then just connect the small marks using curved lines to finish the shape of the circle. Sketch lightly at first so that it's easy to erase if you make a mistake. Also pause the video as you follow along to draw at your own pace. And you don't have to draw a perfect circle, but if you're having trouble drawing one, just trace the outer edge of a coin or a bottle cap or anything else with a circular edge. And to the right, draw a bigger circle as a guide for the front part of the body. And draw this circle using the small marks method too, so make a few small marks to indicate the sides of the circle, and then just connect the small marks using curved lines to finish the shape of that circle. And this circle should be about twice as big as the head circle. And the body will be behind the head, so don't overlap the head circle as you draw this bigger circle. This big body circle almost surrounds the head circle completely. And farther to the right, draw another circular shape as a guide for the back portion of the body. And a big portion of this circle will also be blocked, so only draw the visible section. The two body circles should be roughly the same size, but don't overlap them. Now draw a curved horizontal line inside the head circle for a construction guide. And place this line close to the center of the circle. And at the top, draw a curved vertical line for another construction guide. And draw this line slightly to the right of the center of the circle. On the bottom half of the head, draw another small circle as a guide for the muzzle. And this circle should fit between the space of the horizontal construction guide and the bottom edge of the head circle. Make the circle a bit wide so that it's similar to an oval. And now on top of the head, draw two big triangular shapes as guides for the ears. And don't draw the ears too far down on the sides of the head, draw the ears kind of high up on the head. And curve the lines too, don't make them too straight. The ears should be pretty big in relation to the head. Under the front part of the body, draw a long vertical line as a guide for the front leg. And bend the middle part of the line to indicate a joint, and at the bottom draw a short horizontal line to indicate the foot. And to the right, draw an angled line as a guide for the other front leg. And this leg will be stepping forward, so bend the line a bit more to indicate the joints. Pay attention to how long these lines are in relation to the body. And under the back portion of the body, draw another long vertical line as a guide for the hind leg. And bend the line near the middle to indicate a joint, and at the bottom draw a short horizontal line for the foot. And to the left, draw a shorter vertical line for the other hind leg. And make this line short because again the bobcat is stepping forward, so this leg is going to be slightly raised. And on top of the body, draw a short vertical line for the small tail. And that's it for the guidelines. Now let's start on the final drawing. Okay, inside the head, lightly sketch two small circles for the eyes. Place the eyes on top of the horizontal construction guide and on either side of the vertical guide. And the eyes should be pretty small in relation to the head, don't draw them too big. When you get the sizes and positions of the eyes right, darken the shapes. And draw an angled line above the eye on the left And this will also create the heavy brow above the eye. And then just darken the basic shape of the circle for the eyeball. And add a couple of angled lines on the sides of the eye for the corners of the eye. The inner corner of the eye should point down toward the muzzle, and the outer corner of the eye should point to the side of the head. Now darken the eye on the right the same way. Draw a curved line across the circle to create a sort of closed look for the eye, and then add a couple of angled lines on the sides to create the corners of the eye. The shape of the eye should be thinner than the initial circle. And add a short curved line at the bottom for a bit of bare skin, and extend the lines on the sides to emphasize the corners of the eye. And inside the eyes, draw small thin shapes and shade them in for the pupils. These shapes should be similar to thin ovals with pointy bottoms. Draw the shapes close to the middle of each eye. And on the sides of the pupils, draw tiny circles for highlights. Add a couple of short strokes above the eyes for the fur on the brow. Inside the muzzle, lightly sketch a small triangular shape for the nose. And draw the nose close to the right edge of the small circle for the muzzle. And notice how big the nose is in relation to the small circle. It's pretty big. It takes up a lot of room inside the muzzle. And when you get the size and position of the nose right, darken the lines. Use a wavy line to darken the top part of the nose. And on the sides of the nose, draw short curved lines for the nostrils. Darken the bottom part of the nose and draw a short vertical line inside the nose for a crease. And below the nose, draw a short line that splits into two at the bottom to create the shape of the mouth. And extend the line for the mouth further to the sides so that it touches the edges of the small initial circle for the muzzle. And add a couple of short curved lines on the sides of the initial circle to create the sides of the muzzle. Draw these lines slightly farther away from the initial circle so that the shape of the muzzle is wide. And darken the line for the mouth. And below the mouth, draw a curved line that's made up of short strokes to create the furry chin. And draw this line along the path of the initial circle. Add a couple of short lines on the sides of the nose that point up toward the corners of the eye. Now darken the triangular shape on the top left side of the head to create the first ear. Draw a few extra curved lines on the bottom left side to give the ear structure. And add a series of short strokes along the bottom part of the shape for the furry base of the ear. And inside the shape, draw longer strokes for the fur that's inside the ear. And on top of the ear, draw a few long strokes too for the tuft of fur. And now draw the ear on the right the same way. Darken the guide, but add a few extra curved lines to give the ear structure. At the bottom, draw short strokes for the base of the ear, and inside the shape, draw longer strokes for longer fur. And on the tip of the ear, draw a few more long strokes to create the tuft of fur. And now lightly sketch a couple of long curved lines on the sides of the initial circle to create the wide head. So the bottom part of the head should be a lot wider than the initial circle. And use angled lines at the bottom for the pointy bottom tips of the head. As you draw these lines, create sort of triangular shapes on the bottom part of the head. And when you get the shape of the head right, darken the lines. And as you darken the sides of the head, use a couple of angled lines and short strokes along the paths to create a furry texture on the head. And if you've made it this far, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And now let's move on to the body. Okay, now use the angled line that's under the front part of the body as a guide to draw the front leg. And first, lightly sketch the shape of the leg around the guideline. And don't draw the edges of the leg too close to the guideline or the shape of the leg will be too thin. Bobcats have wide legs, so make the shape of the leg wide. And draw the top part of the leg high up on the body. And when you get the shape of the leg right, darken the lines. Curve the shape of the leg along the path of the guide to create the joints. And add a couple of curved lines along the way to create the muscle structure. And make the bottom part of the shape curved, similar to the letter U for the foot. On the bottom part of the foot, draw a couple of short vertical lines to separate the toes. Now use the line on the left as a guide to draw the other front leg. So first, lightly sketch the shape of the leg around the guideline, and don't overlap the first front leg as you draw this shape. And at the bottom, draw a small rectangular shape for the foot. When you get the shape of the leg right, darken the lines. And darken the top part of the foot using wavy lines to create the top edges of the toes. And inside the foot, draw a couple of vertical lines to separate the toes. And now use the long angled line on the far right side as a guide to draw the hind leg the same way. First, lightly sketch the shape of the hind leg around the guideline. And the top part of this shape should be slightly wider than the bottom. And notice how the bottom half of this shape slopes slightly to the left. And at the very bottom, draw a small rectangular shape for the foot. And when you get the shape of the leg right, darken the lines. And darken the top edge of the small rectangular shape at the bottom using a wavy line for the toes. And inside the rectangular shape, draw a couple of short lines to separate the toes. And now use the remaining shapes and lines as guides to draw the rest of the body. And draw the top part of the body slightly higher than the initial circle. The resulting shape should be similar to a small hill behind the ear. Use lines that are more angular than the initial guides. And draw a curved line along the bottom to create the underside of the body. And below the head, draw a short angled line for the chest. And now draw the shape of the tail along the short line at the top. And draw a small circular shape at the top using a series of short strokes to create the rounded tip of the tail. Now use the vertical line under the body as a guide to draw the other hind leg. Just draw a long curved line that's similar to the letter U to create the lifted hind leg. And at the bottom, draw a couple of short strokes to separate the toes. And that's it for the main section. Now let's move on to finalize the drawing. And now erase the initial guidelines for a cleaner drawing. And you don't have to erase all of the guidelines, it's okay if you leave some behind, but if you really want to get all of them that are between the final lines, you can use a thin eraser like the one I'm using, which is a click pen eraser. You can use a kneaded eraser like I'm doing to erase more of the guidelines and to lighten your drawing so that you don't smudge it as you're shading in the next step. Lightly redraw any of the final lines that you may have accidentally erased. Now shade your drawing. Use a medium value to shade, but leave the bottom half of the head and the underside of the body blank for the white fur. Leave a few thin sections around the eyes blank for a bit of white fur too. And shade lightly at first and gradually build up to darker values. To create light values, push down very lightly on your pencil, and then push down harder to create darker values. Use the darker value to create shadows across the body, and shadows will give the figure more dimension and volume. Pick a light source as you shade so that the shadows are consistent throughout the body. Here the light source is coming from the top, so most of the shadows will be on the undersides of the shapes. Add a couple of long stripes on the sides of the head using a dark value. Now add a spotted pattern across the body using a dark value too. Add the spots using a series of short strokes and make them slightly smaller the farther down you go on the legs. And not all bobcats have spots on their coats, so you can skip this step for an easier drawing and then just add a solid medium value across the entire body. And for even darker values, you can use pencils that have different graphite grades like I'm using. Graphite grades like 2B and 4B work great, and for even darker values you can use 6B as well. Darken the final lines using a dark value to emphasize the shapes. You can also darken the outer edges of the spots and the shadows. And then just continue to add more value across the body. At the bottom, draw a series of short strokes and a few longer strokes to create a grassy texture. Keep shading until you're happy with the result. And that's it for the bobcat. Remember to pause the video to draw at your own pace. Also, please visit howtodrawanimals.com for more tutorials. That's how, and then the number 2, then drawanimals.com. If you'd like to support my channel, please consider buying my books on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description below. Let me know in the comments what other animals you want to see me draw. And if you want to draw more felines, check out my Wild Cats playlist. Don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep drawing.